use programs like the GNU Privacy Guard for encryption of the messages and files we send each other. But even encryption doesn't do the whole job. And when there's censorship, in Australia, the main organization that fights for civil liberties on the Internet, which is Electronic Frontiers Australia, was forced to take down a link that they had put up in a discussion of censorship, showing what kinds of things are getting censored. Well, they were forced to take down that link on the threat of being fined $11,000 a day.
Yeah, let me back you up on that. They've announced, the government itself calls it Chinese-style net censorship, and proudly are now issuing hundreds and hundreds of sites. They're now saying thousands on these lists that you can't visit, you can't link to, and then you can't link and say, look, WikiLeaks leaking government documents. You can't even say that's been censored. That's very 1984 Kafkaesque.
Yeah, well, the Australian government has been trashing human rights for many years, typically in the name of preventing terrorism, as many other governments are doing. Any given week their excuse is either terrorists or pedophiles, but neither of them is anywhere near as dangerous as governments that don't respect our freedom.
Absolutely. Historically, governments killed 200-something million people last century. I mean, tyranny has gotten a whole new lease on life. So specifically, what do we do? I mean, if citizens and companies try to go with free software solutions and support groups like yours, what else can we do? I guess we vote with our dollars, we vote with our time. Let's say I'm a company with 20-something. Yeah.
For centralized surveillance and censorship, they don't let you vote with your time or with your dollars. If you're in Australia and you want to make links to these forbidden sites, for instance, the political sites that talk about Australian censorship, you can't do that by picking one company over another. You'd have to put your site outside Australia, and then maybe Australia wouldn't let anybody link to your site.
Yeah, that's the key. That's what Australia's saying they're going to do, is block most of the web. But, that's the key, is that's what Homeland Security has announced, that they're going to take over all the infrastructure, even of private companies, and as indentured servants, they have to allow Pentagon, Air Forces, who's running it, snooping hubs that control and save all the data. This is open. This makes what Bush was doing look tame in comparison, and I'm nonpartisan. So I guess it doesn't matter because they're seizing the infrastructure. This is criminal.
It is, and the solution I've been using is no good for this. So what can we do? We have to organize politically in mass organizations. The only organization that I know of in the U.S. that fights against these things is the Electronic Frontier Foundation, although I think the American Civil Liberties Union fights also against some of them. So both of those organizations deserve your support.
Is it that Americans and Australians and British and others have had so much freedom in the past we can't believe it's happening here? Or have we lied to ourselves about how much freedom was really in our society?
I think that it's a combination of both. It's certainly the case that there was much less surveillance of all our communication in the past. You see, this is one thing that digital technology makes much easier. In the 1960s, I don't think anything kept track of who you called locally. The phone exchange didn't keep track. It just counted up how many calls you made and sometimes how long they were. The only thing you got on your bill was long-distance calls because they were expensive and people wanted to know what they were being billed for. Now, in France, after World War II, the government insisted that the phone company must not keep any records of who called whom. And the reason was that when the Nazis took over France, they looked at those records to see who spoke to whom, and that way, if they knew that one person seemed to be possibly a center of political opposition, they would not only arrest him, but they would question all the people he tended to make phone calls to. So after the war, the French government and various other governments in Europe established rules that the phone companies were not allowed to keep track. However, of course, they've changed all that.
Well, exactly. I just saw a story in the London Telegraph. In fact, guys, will you search engine this? People have corrected me not to just always say Google. We need to plug Lycos and Scroogle.org and everybody else. In fact, I'll ask you what you think are some good alternatives, because I think Google is becoming evil, at least from what I've seen. But it was in the French news that people were real mad that a guy's friend sent him a message saying, don't blow up the train, because he was going on a ride, and they were there waiting for him when he got to the train station. There was another case in the airport where they made a joke in another European country, and they admitted, they said, oh, no, the phone companies have AI, NSA-type keyword, reading all of it and then flagging it. Everything is red. And that kind of freaked the French out to realize, but the same thing's going on here now. This is just so disgusting.
Well, one thing people can do about that is just throw these things randomly into phone calls the way people have done for a few decades, randomly into their messages. I don't know if anybody was ever looking for keywords in messages to decide to read them, but if people have fun, at least, setting up programs that would automatically put such keywords into their mail.
No, the NSA admits they do that, and that's one of the 20-year-old technologies, as I'm sure you know. You're being humbled, but no, I mean, and in fact, there was articles in like 2002 where they were complaining that citizens, what's the term for that, where I say, yeah, I got the football, I got the green stuff. Yeah, did you hear about that nuke that's going to go off? Yeah, I'll tell you what else. And of course, they also reported that really economic espionage is what's happening. So, yeah, this new processor is 9 times faster than anything else IBM's got, but don't let Bob know. I'm going to be delivering it next Tuesday. That just drives them completely ape.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hope so, because if we keep them busy enough, maybe they won't attack us as much. But I have a feeling that won't solve the problem. Really, I don't see anything that's going to solve this problem except talking about freedom and demanding freedom and condemning the government attacks on our freedom and rejecting the excuses.
So it's political will. We've got to recognize tyranny when it's in front of our nose.
That's the only solution I can see, if it's a solution. It's not going to be easy. I wish I knew some clever technical method that could protect our freedom. I was lucky, in one particular area, I saw a way that through technical work we could protect our freedom, but only particular aspects of our freedom. All the others, they're different.
Absolutely. Wow. Well, we're really appreciative of your time, sir. Other facets, other points that people should be made aware of that from your research and others' research that are real threats to freedom right now, because it seems not just threats. We have this surveillance being institutionalized to where there's just no such thing as a Fourth Amendment.
Yes. We see the logic for reasoning about privacy rights is screwed up in the U.S. It may have worked okay in the past. The argument usually is if a policeman could see it from the street, then he's got a right to look. And that made sense, sort of, in 1960. But now, with computers that can record so much data, if it's okay for the police to set up cameras and other kinds of sensors everywhere to keep track of everything that a policeman could theoretically have possibly seen from a public place about you, and put all that together, then he knows everything about you.
Yeah, and the pendulum's going the wrong way. Well, look at London, 4 million cameras, and now they've made it illegal to videotape the police, and they walk up and threaten to arrest tourists now, videotaping monuments. I mean, government is way out of control because private corporate interests have turned government into nothing but their little lapdogs.
Yes, and a large part of the cause of this, actually, is so-called free trade treaties.
Yes.
which I'd rather call low-wage treaties, because these treaties take the power from governments
Yes.
and give them to businesses. The business say, to the governments, if you don't do exactly what we want, we'll move to some other country. And the governments respond by saying, oh, yes, we'll do whatever you want. Of course, the politicians mostly aren't really strongly imbued with a wish to do anything else, and they probably are somehow going to get rewarded for going along.